Remove the bottom lid, flip the unit over, turn front clips and push bottom clips in. Grab the bottom lid and lift. Removing pump motor and screws. With a Phillips head screwdriver, remove the 4 screws holding the pump motor in place. The unit is now free from the casing. Removing the pump motor wire in. Pull floating cable away from casing. Using pliers or a wrench, loosen the nuts holding the cable connection for the drive motor. Next, loosen the nuts holding the floating cable and the sensor wheels. Removing motor screws. Flip motor upside down so you are looking at the impeller. Take a Phillips head screwdriver and remove the 6 screws holding the casing together. Removing the pump motor back housing. Remove the motor backing. Put the desiccant or moisture absorbent aside to be replaced later. Removing wheel sensor cables from the pump motor assembly. Pull the yellow and black cables from their harness and pull the wires through the casing. Removing the floating cord from the pump housing. Pull the floating cord harness from the circuit board and pull the rest of the cable through the casing. Removing the drive motor from the pump motor. Pull the drive motor cable from the harness on the circuit board and pull through the housing. Reinstalling the pump motor cable into the pump housing. Take the drive motor cable and thread into the housing. Hand tighten the nut into the case. Take the harness and reinstall onto the circuit board. Reinstalling the floating cord into the pump housing. Thread the floating cord into the housing, hand tighten the nut, take the harness and push into proper socket on the circuit board. Reinstalling the wheel sensors into the pump housing. Take the sensor wheels and thread into the housing. Make sure there is enough extra wire to plug into the circuit board. Take the nut and hand tighten onto casing. Reinstalling the wheel sensor wires into the pump housing. Straighten the wire to give leverage when installing back into the board. Put in proper place and using a screwdriver, make sure they are pressed all the way into the socket. Tuck all of the wires in so not to kink when housing is reassembled. Wire nut torquing. Using pliers or wrench, hand tighten the cable nuts until firm. Reinstalling the pump motor screws. Make sure you replace the desiccant or moisture absorbent before putting the casing back together. Align the screw holes and push firmly together. Take the removed screws and put them back in place. Initial torquing of pump motor screws. With a Phillips head screwdriver, go around the casing and tighten all of the screws in a cross-tightening pattern until snug. Go back around and tighten all screws again until hand tightened. Make sure not to over-tighten or pinch the gasket when reassembling. Final torquing of pump motor screws. Go back around and tighten all screws again until hand tightened. Make sure not to over tighten or pinch the gasket when reassembling. Reinstalling the pump motor into the shell and installing the floating cord. Place the motor back onto the mounting brackets. Push the cords back into cord brackets on the casing. Installing the pump motor into the shell. Using a Phillips head screwdriver, replace the 4 mounting screws securing the motor into place. Gather up all excess wiring and use the wire tie to secure them to the cleaner strainer.